Hello and welcome to Point of View, the show that decodes the region and beyond. I am Wasbir Hussain. The big question is, the West Asia crisis is exploding. Now the big question, is it spiraling out of control? Also the point, who is likely to step in or who can actually step in to bring in some sense to this whole war and try to drive in reason and possibly stop it. Now, after the joint Israel-US strikes that began Saturday leading to the killing of Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Tehran has clearly decided to escalate the war. Iran has targeted American assets in its Gulf Arab nations, neighbors like UAE, Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, and even Saudi Arabia. Now, 555 people have already died according to the International Red Crescent, and it is counting. Now, there has been explosions unheard of. Heard a short while ago, even in Dubai, something which is unheard of in the past. Dubai, explosions over Dubai. Kuwait is saying that several American aircrafts have crashed in Kuwait, but all the pilots have ejected safely. And so on and so forth. So absolutely a complex situation in West Asia. What began as a war between Israel and Iran, Israel assisted by the United States, now it is escalating into one of the biggest West Asian crises, a huge West Asian crisis. I have a very esteemed panel with me this evening. I have Lieutenant General retired Ata Hasnain, a well-known defense commentator and strategic affairs expert at this point in time. I have Professor Swaran Singh from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, and a very, very prominent global affairs expert. I have Mr. Ayanjit, a geopolitical expert and is the chief advisor, Red Lantern Analytica. And I have with me also Colonel Dibya Bhattacharya, a very well-known defense analyst. Gentlemen, welcome to Point of View. Let me go straight to you, General Ata Hasnain. General, how are you viewing this? The crisis exploding in West Asia, it's almost spiraling out of control. Who would have thought that a city like Dubai will have to deal with missiles, some of its iconic locations hit by missiles directed from Iran, of course targeted supposedly at the Western, at the American assets hosted by these countries, but now civilian at stake. What is your take? How do you read the situation?
Thank you very much for inviting me for your program, and my compliments to this amazing panel that you have put together. One has been observing this not just last 2-3 days, but over the last 2 months and perhaps even longer. One did not expect this turn of events so quickly. Yesterday, when the strikes took place, day before yesterday too, it has led to a fair amount of asymmetry as such between the United States, Israel combined against Iran. One thing we can say for certain, it was an amazing demonstration of technology and of intelligence penetration. That is what achieved this kind of a surprise. There was a deception plan in place with the diplomatic cover which was given all along for the last couple of weeks when negotiations were also on simultaneously. But having said this, the manner in which this operation was carried out and the suppression of air defense which was achieved, obviously there is a huge existing military asymmetry between the combined of United States, Israel against Iran. One would not have expected Iran to respond immediately so quickly, but having lost its top leadership, almost 40 odd leaders, the IRGC over a period of time also having lost a large number of commanders and leaders, I think a decision seems to have been taken in a hurry that there will be a pushback and there will be an escalation. So I don't see this escalation going towards anything advantageous as far as Iran is concerned, because the asymmetry, as I said, is just far too intense. But we know Iran well. We know Iranian ideology well. We know the kind of things that they believe in, and sacrifice is one of the very important aspects. So they are not going to go down without a fight. But while doing this fight, they seem to be targeting all the wrong targets. Places like Dubai, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, people who have nothing really to do with this war, except the fact that they are housing some of the US bases in these areas. Also, the Straits of Hormuz have been closed, and there's a huge impact taking place on the international energy market, on international economy, which is
Right.
likely to take place in the near future. Having said all this, the escalation seems to be spiraling as it has happened, as it has been seen
You
today.
said, General,
Yeah.
you said, I'm coming to Professor Swaran Singh and the rest of my panelists, but one more question related to the General. General Hasnain, you know, the Saudi Crown Prince Salman has already authorized military retaliation against Iran, calling its attack on Saudi Arabia cowardly. And of course, some time ago, Iranian missiles hit the Aramco oil refinery in Saudi Arabia, which has been temporarily shut. Now, let's talk about Saudi Arabia. Okay, we know that UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, all these Gulf Arab nations have been affected by, you know, they've seen a lot of drone and missile activity sent from Iran, of course. But Saudi Arabia, if Saudi Arabia is to retaliate, do you think it will be escalation at a different level?
You're 100% right. Escalation coming from the smaller Gulf nations who do not have that capability and perhaps do not have that kind of a reach will not make such a strategic difference. But yes, the Saudi-Iran competition, strategic differences are fairly intense, and we are aware of both nations looking at leadership of the Islamic world. Saudi Arabia has got the complete support of the United States and also a deep cooperation, strategic cooperation with Israel. So the Saudis are not holding back on this. And I would recall also for our viewers that 3 years ago, the Chinese thought that they had got Iran and Saudis to sign a peace deal to start negotiations all over again and establish a diplomatic relations. But it seems that they never understood the intensity of in intra-Islamic competition which is there between these two nations. And I dare say that a lot of what is happening from the Saudi side is meeting the endorsement of the United States.
Yeah.
It is only expanding the endorsement, the capability of the United States in bringing this war to an end.
Okay.
But only with the kind of escalation that we will witness in the very near future.
All right, I'll quickly bring in Professor Swaran Singh. Professor Swaran Singh, this is something, you know, which was not a surprise. Of course, it has taken like the Israel's decision to attack Iran. Now, are you surprised that Iran's decided to escalate the war by attacking targets which they say they are only targeting the American assets in the Gulf Arab nations nearby? Do you think it is taking on the entire neighborhood?
Indeed, it should not come as a surprise because for several weeks, Iran had been openly publicizing that in case United States and Israel decide to hit it again, the response and retaliation will include all the military locations of United States in the region. Of course, it has gone beyond military locations, and it has even hit civilian locations, particularly airports like Dubai airport, for example, or Manama airport. But that could be explained also because both sides are now hitting civilian targets. So what is very clear in this situation is enormous asymmetry, as General just mentioned. There is no doubt the preponderance that the United States air power and naval power have, and of course add to that the Israelis, will leave Iran with very limited options. So given their limited options, what they are doing is internationalizing the whole conflict. And they are blocking Strait of Hormuz, which will have immediately global reverberations in terms of energy becoming costlier and so on, and hitting all these states which are not known to be friendly to, I mean, one can also look at in terms of Shia-Sunni divide and the whole contestation that all of these are basically close allies of United States. So they are not really innocent countries as far as Iran is concerned. And Iran had publicly said that they will be my targets, and they are doing that. And right now we understand more than 130 cities of Iran have been bombed. Red Crescent is saying more than 550 people have died in Iran.
Yes.
And of course, likewise, some casualties, very limited casualties in UAE or in Israel, or I understand that 4 or 5 American soldiers are dead and so on.
Right.
But nationalizing it is part of the strategy. And second very significant point, which perhaps makes regime change difficult, it's not individual based rulership in Iran, it's institutions based rulership. And they have religious councils, they have parliament, they have elections. That is why they are able to, even if the second rank of some of these officers of IRGC are killed, they are able to put up the next chain of command immediately.
Yes, I will
sustain in terms of response.
Absolutely. I'll rotate very quickly. Let me go to Ayanjit very quickly. Ayanjit, what we are seeing now is the total disruption of the energy supplies already, as the general was saying, that Strait of Hormuz has been sealed by the Iranians. Severe aviation disruption, market volatility, oil prices shoring up, impacting India. Sensex down at least by 1,200 points almost. Nifty is down. Now, do you think that Iran is actually trying to escalate and internationalize the situation and force the whole world to take note of what's going on, and to prevent it from just a bilateral dispute between Israel and Iran? It's no longer the case. Even the British bases have been made available for the Americans now.
Thank you, Wasbir, and greetings to all my co-panelists. Well, I think first of all, we have to understand the fact that it's kind of an energy shock that we may term it. But prior to going into that energy shock transpondence, from that perspective, I think it has been a mathematics of missiles, and that is exactly what started off from a way that the entire the war zone has kind of affected not just 2 countries, but several countries at one point of time. So if we from that perspective, from an Iranian side, say any kind of a sustained conflict,
okay,
of course, involves.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ayanjit, your connectivity, your voice is breaking. We'll come back to you. Let's quickly go to Colonel Dibya Bhattacharya before I get back to the general. Colonel Dibya Bhattacharya, how do you read the situation? Because and here is a breaking news coming in. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has claimed, they made a sensational claim. They said that they launched a missile attack directly targeting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office in Jerusalem. Now, the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, indicate that the office and the Prime Minister's specific location were the primary targets of the latest missile wave. So now, all these reports, whether it is true or not, that's a different matter. That is what the Iranians are now claiming. So this indeed talks of a huge escalation. Now, my question is, do you think who is going to de-escalate? Do you see a role for India?
First of all, thank you for having me on this esteemed panel. I would like to state that, yes, Iran is looking for escalation. And why it is trying for escalation? It is basically to internationalize the affair. Number one. Number two, it is trying to ensure that we will hit back if we are targeted. And it is now a no-holds-barred attack on Iran, on Israel, and also the neighboring states. Coming back to your question, I think the question of de-escalation will come only after some time. And I assume that for the next week or so, we will see constant American and Israeli bombarding. And thereafter, possibly I look at it, because if you see Brigadier General Ahmad Vahidi, who has taken over charge of the Revolutionary Guards, he is supposed to be a hardcore soldier, and he is likely to give the leadership. So we are likely to see a second round of strikes.
So you predict.
And coming back to your question, whether India has a role or no. Yes, definitely at some point of time, I think India will have a role, because our relations, whether it is historical or current, with both the parties, it is a good relation. We have friendly relations with Iran, as also with Israel and USA.
No, so let me come back to General Dibya. Just hold your thoughts. Dibya, hold it. Okay. The okay, this is the breaking story. General, I will seek your comments on this. The United States has confirmed that 3 F-15 fighter jets have been downed near Kuwait. However, the United States claimed that the jets crashed due to friendly fire. That's one big story we are tracking at this point in time. Kuwait has said several American jets have crashed in Kuwait, and that is the confirmation. Now, General, I want to ask you this question, not related to this downing of the American jets. Now, concerned, do you think that the Shia Sunni traditional divide, traditional rivalry, has anything to do with Iran taking the opportunity and attacking its Gulf nations, neighbors, Gulf Arab neighbors? Because look at Bahrain. It has a Shia majority, but it is ruled by a Sunni monarchy. So there must be a lot of resentment there. And of course, UAE has a dispute with Iran over 3 Gulf islands, Abu Muba and so on and so forth, Greater Tunbis and Lesser Tunbis. So there's a dispute, and everywhere there is some kind of a dispute. But do you think Iran is taking this opportunity, apart from saying that we are targeting only American assets, they have also an axe to grind, ideological axe to grind?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. That's a good question indeed, Wasbir Sahab. I would respond simply by saying that when you have an asymmetric situation, when one side is devoid of resources and you have a very, very powerful side on the other side fighting you, your decisions may not always be very rational. So to say that this is, based upon the Shia-Sunni divide and things like that, I would not apply all these rules here. There is a level of desperation which is going on in war fighting. This often happens. When you lose a top-level leadership, when you do not have a leadership in place, it is still coming about once again. The second-rung leadership is coming. You will suddenly find decisions of all kinds being taken. And I don't think Iran is acting very rationally at the moment. Whatever level of a response it can give at this time, it is resorting to that. Of course, there will be claims and counterclaims. There will be a lot of narrative building which will happen. This claim about killing Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is doing the rounds at the moment. It has caused confusion. In modern day warfare today, making use of the networks, social media, etc., this is a desire of one side to try and make sure that the other side goes on the defensive. So this kind of a thing will continue. Your specific question which you put regarding India's role, I would like to respond to that. I think it's a very important question, but India, by tradition, if you see, we have not been stepping into most of these disputes. Even in the case of Ukraine, we had a good chance at that particular time. We were well off with both sides, but we didn't step into it. Here, we are one of the few nations which has got a good relationship with Iran and have also, of course, got a good relationship with Israel and the United States. But I do not foresee immediately something coming from the Indian side, from our side. Although the stakes are very, very high for us. 9.5 million 9.5 million Indians are expatriates out here. $52 billion worth of money comes in here. All our energies, 60% of our energy flows in from here. So there isn't anyone with higher stakes than India. But to put all this together, then outreach has to begin to almost everyone. I think a conglomeration of nations such as India, Japan, the European Union will have to come together to look at this potential of trying to bring about a ceasefire.
But, well, Professor Swaran Singh, it is not just Iran escalating. Let's say Professor Swaran Singh on the screen. Yes, it is not just Iran escalating. Israel is saying now that, they have all options open for a ground invasion of Lebanon. And already 50 people have been killed in a strike in Lebanon during the last 24 hours. Now, the point is, they're saying that, we are targeting the Hezbollah and so on and so forth. It's, of course, a proxy of Iran. That is the well-known stand. Now, Israel is saying that all options for a ground invasion is open. Do you think even Israel is escalating that way, for that matter?
I think in war, as General would vouch me, there is often use of bravados. There's information warfare in that sense. And therefore, both sides will continue to take a maximalist position. But whether at this stage Israel would put the soldiers in Lebanon, that would be perhaps riskier, because they need to put all their hands together to ensure that incoming missiles are not able to damage Israeli citizens, that they are able to ensure law and order and panic doesn't really trigger in Israel itself. Because despite a very solid Iron Dome air defense that they have, in June last year, Israelis themselves claimed that they, along with the help of third of United States, could only intercept up to 86% of 550 missiles that Iran had launched. So lots of missiles could potentially and drones could potentially, do certain amount of damage, and that should be the primary focus of Israel. Plus, its escalation vis-a-vis Iran that is continuing all this time. So opening new fronts is not something which Israel has not done before, can do. We saw it fighting with Hamas and Hezbollah simultaneously. But Iran is slightly a bigger challenge in that sense. But what we are noticing here is that both sides are continuing to have what I call controlled escalation. It's not a do and die kind of throw it all situation, but escalation on both sides is continuing. And it so appears that you just mentioned that 3 F-16s, perhaps if I heard you right, were killed in friendly fire. I mean, is that the level of preparedness these Gulf regimes have in terms of their military preparedness to deal with Iran? And no doubt Israel and United States are really very powerful armies. But what happens to these other Arab states? What kind of military capabilities that they have? Can they deal with Iran on their own? Absolutely not. So United States, I'm saying, will have an additional burden, and Israel will have an additional burden to also help these Arab states from Irani strikes. And Iran is going to put that pressure point as much as possible, because it knows that is where it can really pressurize. It cannot as much pressurize. It cannot reach United States, for example. It will avoid hitting aircraft carriers directly. That's escalating little too much. So Iran is, according to me, is fairly calculated in its response. And I think IRGC and militaries are supposed to keep very, very calculated, rational choices even under enormous stress. And General would again vouch me on that. So yes, there is a certain amount of desperation. There's an emotional disruption, turmoil, because someone who was leading Iran for 37 years is no more. But I see that Iran's response is fairly calculated.
Okay. I had promised the General that I'd let him go in 20 minutes because he has another event to attend. General, I'm coming to you, Ayanjit and Colonel Dibya Bhattacharya. Please bear with me. General Hasnain, today the Iranians are saying that one of its nuclear facilities have been hit. This has been denied by the IAEA. They said that no extra amount of radiation level continues to be normal, so it is unlikely that any Iranian nuclear facility has been hit. But the Iranians are claiming that their nuclear facility has been hit. Now, my question to you, General, is not this. A couple of months ago, when Israel and the United States attacked Iran, then both sides said that we have completely decimated Iran's nuclear capability. That is the claim made by Israel and United States then. But now, what kind of a target they are trying to eliminate? A lot of people would like to ask this question. A lot of people would be curious.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's an excellent question. It brings out a different context completely. First of all, going along with Professor Saab's contention that this is all about narratives, information war. If Iran states that it mentions about U.S. targeting of nuclear facilities, etc., it is of course bringing about a escalation in the minds of people to say, see, we are under this kind of an attack. Even our peaceful nuclear use installations are being attacked. That projection which is there is not necessarily an iota of truth in it. This, of course, the IAEA has already confirmed. Regarding what happened 8 months ago during Midnight Hammer, the Operation Midnight Hammer, yes, the United States and Israel had claimed that they had destroyed this thing completely. But then within a month, the claims started building up to say that no, Iran has got the capability to rebuild, refurbish what what remained of their facilities with them. And that is one of the prime reasons which they decided to use as a trigger for this particular operation at this time. So we are living in a world of narratives at the moment. People will build all kinds of information stories around us and hope like hell that they will embed themselves and convince people about the righteousness of them. So, unfortunately, there are not very many ways of finding out what is actually fake news and what is not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At this point, I'd like to thank you very much, General Atta
Thank you very
Hasnain,
much.
for being on
Thank
the
you
program.
so
Let
much.
me go quickly to...
I thank my fellow panelists also, and thank you very much for bearing me out in getting all the priority in front of you.
No, thank you very much. It is thanks to my other panelists also, that they give me the opportunity to end with you. Thank you very much, General. Let me go to Ayanjit Sen. Ayanjit, now what are we expecting out of this? What can happen? What can happen now? There is a competition for regional dominance. There is a competition over control over the oil routes. U.S. military presence in the Gulf, regional religious political ideology, influence over, conflict zones, Ayanjit. So now the point is, what can we expect? How is it going to spiral out of control? Do you think oil prices going to go up and it is going to create a whole lot of chaos for all over the world?
The preliminary thing is to do with the fact that it's more of a escalation dominance rather than outcome dominance. That's exactly what the US is also looking for. And that's exactly the way the information war is currently going on. Since I came back 2 days back from Europe, and I could see a lot of Iranian protesters in different parts of Europe who had been protesting against the current, the regime which just headed by Khomeini, which just collapsed. But the point that it was trying to make is the fact that any kind of a so-called energy shock that we talk about, that's something which will not come so easily, because on the face of it, a sustained conflict always raises the price. But remember, at the end of the day, it's not going to be the sole way of getting the prices up. For example, from an economic perspective, I'm speaking. Traders will be watching the markets closely. But remember, as far as oil is concerned, of course, the Iranian oil, for example, China takes about 85% of Iranian oil. Where is China today? How much has China spoken against this? It's just a statement or two that has come out. Where is China today?
Where is China today? Let me go to Professor Swaran Singh. Professor Swaran Singh, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi gave a statement earlier today. He said China calls for a ceasefire. China said that it is absolutely unacceptable what Israel has done to Iran and so on, and he has called for a ceasefire. That is the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi saying. And he has, and of course, as Ayanjit said, that China is the biggest buyer of Iranian oil, of course.
There is no doubt. In some ways, this can also be seen as a contestation between the United States and China, where United States is fundamentally trying to have a full control on oil and gas around the world, and that is the actual cause, not nuclear weapons, not regime change, but to control Iranian oil and therefore squeeze China, because China is already using its rare earth materials. So that is one way of looking at it, and that is where Chinese are responding, and as Chinese always do, they are very cautious. So they started on the very first day, in few hours after the initial strikes, they said, oh, we are very concerned and we want the ceasefire to come about as soon as possible. We want dialogue and peace and so on. About 10 hours later, they changed and they immediately moved a step forward, saying territorial integrity and national sovereignty and security of Iran should be respected. Now, as you mentioned, 24 hours later, the most seasoned leader in China next to Xi Jinping, particularly on foreign policy, Wang Yi is a very senior leader.
Yes.
I'm quoting him. He said, blatant killing of a sovereign leader is unacceptable. And he also said it is a serious violation of international norms. So they are incrementally moving forward, and that is what IRGC is calculating in their controlled escalation, how Russia and China, Turkey, North Korea are going to respond to this, maybe Malaysia, potentially Shia populations around the world are protesting and so on. So they are calculating, and Chinese are incrementally going forward, and Chinese and Russians are the ones who are providing Iran with a lot of defense equipment and technologies, and long-term contracts are signed. Of course, Iran has also supplied drones to Russia in war in Ukraine. So they are the strongest backers, and China is particularly backing because it needs Iran for energy. It imports enormous amounts of energy from the region, not just from Iran.
Yeah.
So in that sense, Chinese have gradually, incrementally up the ante as far as they are concerned, and that is a typical way of doing it. So it might, if it prolongs for a longer period of time, we'll see contestation really coming out in open that this was actually a fight for energy between China and United States.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting way of looking at it. Let me go to Colonel Dibya Bhattacharya. Colonel Bhattacharya, you know, today, let's have everybody on the screen, please. Let's have everybody on the screen. Okay, Colonel Bhattacharya, you know, what we saw today was Iranian Shahid drone, targeting that Aramco oil refinery, Saudi Aramco oil refinery that was hit, and forcing the Saudi Arabia to shut down that refinery for a while. It's in Ras Tanura, that is the location. Now, the question I'm asking you, you see, the Iranians supplied the Russians with an array of drones, and there were photographs emerging this morning in the social media showing underground bunkers, underground facilities where you know hundreds and thousands of Iranian drones are being kept. So, do you think, can we sort of see a situation where Iran is preparing itself for a long haul kind of a conflict in the Gulf Arab area, and that we cannot take Iran lightly?
Definitely. As I look at it, I have got 2 points. The first point is that it is a battle of narratives. And as far as narratives is concerned, the threat of nuclear weapons, I think that is a false narrative which has been created by the US or Israel. It is more to do with oil, because America has effectively tried a regime change in Venezuela, which is the largest, I would say, which has the largest reservoir of oil at almost 17% of the oil reserves. Now, Iran has almost 12% of the oil reserves. So the battle is for control of oil. Now, coming to the second, we have seen that Iran has got a very sophisticated drone program, to the extent that in the Russia-Ukraine war, we have seen that Iran has been one of the largest suppliers of drone to Russia. So in a way, if I were to look at it from the technological point of view, the Iranian drone program is almost at the same level or slightly higher than even Russia. Coming back again to your point, now what we see is that it is a controlled escalation which has taken place.
Okay.
Now, by controlled escalation, I mean that the Iranians are keeping their drones and other missiles possibly for use, because they think that it will be a long drawn-out conflict, and they will try to get US and Israel into a long drawn-out conflict.
Right. Ayanjit, I'm coming to you. I have to let Professor Swaran Singh leave. Professor Swaran Singh, you know, I mean, you see, after the Saturday's strike, after Ali Khamenei was eliminated, after he was killed, President Trump announced that he has been killed, and then he literally urged upon the people of Iran to take to the streets and start an uprising. He said that this is your best chance. You will not get a chance like this. So, do you think in today's day and age, you have watched regime changes around the world, but do you think you can change a regime through aerial attacks?
Looks difficult to me, particularly when we talk of a regime which is entrenched strongly in terms of Iran's long history since 1979, and it has faced all kinds of the pressures, sanctions, even all kinds of possibilities of earlier attempts for regime change, etc. So this is not first time. And more lately, both during first term and now, President Trump has been fairly harsh on Iran, and Iran knew that such an attack is an imminent possibility. But the fact that US was able to camouflage it in terms of focusing on negotiations in Geneva
Yeah.
while preparing for this attack at the same time, uh, perhaps led to enormous death and destruction. And the entire the top-notch leadership of about 45 people who were sitting with Ali Khamenei are apparently all killed in that sense. So that has created a major disruption. There is no doubt on it. Now they are trying to first put their own house in order. They want to make sure that people are, upgraded and promoted to take those positions which are now empty. So they are trying to fix their own state and their own system in order, and IRGC is at the center of it. According to Iranian constitution, Article 150, IRGC is created not for the Republic of Iran. It's created to protect Iranian revolution and its achievement, which means fundamentally the supreme leader is the supreme commander, and the loyalty is towards supreme commander and supreme leader, who is a Shiite cleric in that sense. Now, the new person who would obviously replace Ali Khamenei might, be weak initially, will take long time to put control on, power status, etc., etc. So right now, IRGC is calling the shots in that sense, is what I'm saying.
Right.
And they have been able to sustain response. They are saying they will continue to sustain that response. Hopefully, there are also possibilities. President Trump is saying that they are calling him to start talks with him. He is saying that talks may happen. Sometimes he says, I will not talk to them, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But right now, the reality is that thousands of strikes continue to happen, and people continue to be at least targets. Most of them also have died. So that kind of uncertainty is the reality now. But Iran is not some country where you can shoot from 30,000 feet and imagine that regime change will happen and people will do the uprising, etc. Killing of Ali Khamenei, if anything, has brought the Iranian people behind the regime. They may hate their own regime, but they hate Israel and United States much more than that. So killing of Ali Khamenei has actually strengthened the kind of the support inside the domestic population of Iran right now. That is my reading.
That's a very sharp comment. They may hate their own regime, but they hate Israel and the United States much more than they hate their own regime. That is what Professor Swaran Singh has said as far as the feeling perhaps within the Iranians at this point in time. Professor, thank you very much for joining on this broadcast. I'll come to my panelists, but I'm now joined from Dubai live by a Dubai resident, Audrey Sangma, who is from Meghalaya. Audrey, thank you for being on this broadcast. You are passing through very, very tense times in Dubai. How is the situation now? What are you picking up? And how has the life been in the last 24 to 48 hours for you?
Thank you for having me on this show. It's actually been very uncertain. Definitely, there's a little fear, but we can notice that everything is under control. I was in Abu Dhabi the time when the attack happened. I was attending work there, and there was it was everything under was everything was under control. And I traveled from Abu Dhabi to Dubai at around 10 o'clock in the night, and yes, we could see fire in the skies.
Yeah.
That was the interception happening. We could hear vibrations, we could hear loud noise, but yes, there is an air of uncertainty. But I would say that, everyone really trusts the government and how they are really controlling the situation. So, I mean, that's the atmosphere right now.
Well, Audrey, you see, no, people generally, cannot imagine that something like this can happen in Dubai, which is
Yes.
a
Yeah,
city
exactly.
which never sleeps. It's full of life. It's the vibrant city, and some of its iconic spots have been hit. Palm Jumeirah, for example, the Hotel Al Arab, for example. So nobody could imagine that something like this they have to face at some point in time. And look at the situation in the Dubai airport.
Yeah.
How it has faced some debris fell, and there was a lot of panic among the passengers and so on and so forth.
Yes. I agree there is panic, but also there's a lot of what the government is also doing. Like, I know so many people are stranded in UAE, be it tourists, be it destination wedding guests, a lot of people. But there's a lot of what is also Abu Dhabi and Dubai government doing. They're taking care of the accommodation, they're taking care of their food. So they are actually being well taken care of. It is very unfortunate that the debris fell and there was fire and there were casualties, but the kind of response that the government has is really really amazing to look at. So I mean, that is what is assuring the citizens, I would say.
Absolutely. And when was the last time that you have heard loud bangs? Is it continuing now, or there is a relative calm at this moment?
The one that I heard today was at 9:30 a.m. and after that there's nothing.
Absolutely. Let's hope nothing more happens, Audrey.
Yes.
Thank you very much
Yes.
for being on the program, and stay safe.
Thank you
And
so much.
stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Yeah. Let me go back to Ayanjit. Ayanjit, there has been proxy wars. We all know that there has been proxies. For example, the Iran has been supporting. Can we have everybody on the screen, please? Iran supports the Houthis as far as Yemen is concerned. In Yemen, the Iran is supporting the Houthis and the Saudi leading military coalition against the Houthis. In Syria, Iran is backing President Bashar al-Assad. In Lebanon, Iran is backing the Hezbollah. Now, Ayanjit, it's no longer a proxy war; it's a direct battle. And Israel saying that they will march into Lebanon. They're threatening to march into Lebanon to take on the Hezbollah. So, as my earlier panelists, as the general said, as Professor Swaran Singh said, during a war, lot of narratives are built, lot of bravado is shown. Do you think it is that, or do you think these are possibilities?
Well, I think there are some possibilities. The Iranian Foreign Minister, Dr. Abbas, insisted that he does not need any proxies to fight the battle. But at the same time, when you took the example of Hezbollah, now it's like preempting the inevitable. Because remember, Hezbollah, which launched rocket barrage, targeting northern Israel, and Israel is after them. This shift of Hezbollah was, I think, driven by more of a existential fear rather than just a kind of solidarity that they're trying to come up with the Iranian authorities. And it's because Hezbollah is also believing that, for example, they can be next on the list after this. So it's kind of they're trying to kind of build up kind of a arsenal despite the recent losses that they have had. And that's exactly what they think that Israel may do to them post Iran. And I think because of all these, the so-called forces which the Iranian authorities had put up, now slowly, I think what is happening is they are also preempting a full-scale Israeli offensive. And this escalation is going to be definitely rooted in its new strategic reality.
Okay.
Because just wait for a couple of more days, maybe less, maybe a little more. But
All
we
right.
will see
We'll have to-
how this land bridge, the so-called land bridge, is going to collapse soon.
Okay, we'll have to-
The entire part of that is definitely going to have a different geography with possibly a different future to come in the future, different future to come. But because they are trying to have one thing as their main line, and that is solidarity, because they're thinking that solidarity is only going to make sure that they survive. But at the same time, some way or the other,
Yeah.
attack the US, do whatever they
We'll
can
have to
against the West, and
we'll have to wait and watch, Ayanjit. We'll have to
concept.
wait and watch. Let me, for the last comments, final comments, let's go to Colonel Dibya Bhattacharya. Colonel Bhattacharya, I mentioned about this Shia-Sunni rivalry between the Shias and the Sunnis all across the world. Now, if you remember, after the 1979 Islamic Revolution led by the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini at that point of time, Iran, after that revolution, when Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini actually took power, Iran began promoting Shia political influence across the region. They tried to promote the Shia political influence in the Arab Gulf region at that point of time. This was something which was viewed rather warily by countries like Saudi Arabia, which is a Sunni-dominated Muslim country, Wahhabism that follows Wahhabi Islamic beliefs. And do you think now Iran, after whatever it has lost its supreme leader, was killed? Do you think the Iranians are now thinking that our supreme leader is killed, the regime? Iranians means, I'm mentioning only about the regime. The regime is thinking that since we have lost our supreme leader, why not escalate the war and take some of our ideological religious rivals? Could that be also one of the reasons?
Yes, that could possibly be one of the reasons. And why I say that, if you see the period from 1979 to 1989, when Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini was there, he basically was building up on the Islamic Revolution. But after him, from 1989 till 2026, for the last 36 years, if you see, what Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had done was that he was trying to broad base it. In fact, he had in his initial years come also to India and various other countries of the world. Basically, wherever the Shia Muslims were there, he was trying to have a constituency and trying to project that the Muslim Brotherhood, as he looked at it, to take the leadership. Now, this was viewed with great skepticism by Saudi Arabia, who was taking it that the Sunni. So I look at it that yes, there was a definite rift between Shia and Sunnis. And secondly, since in the last 36 years, the regime has got deeply entrenched in Iran. So I think possibly they will look at it that how they can escalate this war and also at the same time propagate their views so that they have more influence and control over countries in the neighborhood.
All right. So things are spiraling out of control clearly. The big question is whether the West Asia crisis is exploding. It is, of course, exploding. Iran continues strike across West Asia. Iran claims Netanyahu's office struck with missiles. This is a big claim by Iran today. Iran has said that they had targeted a missile at the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's office, and they said that it has been struck with missiles. Loud explosions heard in Dubai and Abu Dhabi for the third consecutive day. Iran's nuclear facility hit. That's what the country's diplomat to the IAEA said. But the IAEA on its turn has said that there is no abnormal increase in radiation levels anywhere in Iran. So almost rejecting the idea that any nuclear facility has been hit. Now, death toll in Iran, according to the International Red Crescent, has gone up to 555 or more. 131 Iranian cities have been hit. Several American warplanes crashed in Kuwait, but crews survived. Iran's drones hit Aramco oil refinery in Saudi Arabia. Refinery has been temporarily shut. And Israeli military strikes on Lebanon kill close to 50. So these are the top headlines at this point in time. We'll keep tracking the developments in West Asia, particularly the war between Iran and Israel, of course, the United States pitching in. And on this note, we want to end this program and thank my esteemed panelists for the show, and also thank my viewers for watching the program. Good evening.